As far as the other group is concerned, I do have to get your opinion on this one because, again, dude, NiP just once again kind of leaving you wondering where is this team? What is going on with this team? Because when I watched them play against Vitality on Vertigo, it was like it was like getting teeth pulled. It was such a painful match to watch. Just nobody really seeming to be able to get anything going. Who was showing up? Is it is it Alexi B who's the top fragger on this team all of a sudden? Like, what is going on here? It still feels like NiP are kind of out in the wind trying to figure out what it is that they need to be doing to win matches. I mean, granted, they got it done against Astralis, so fair enough. There's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel there after 2 losses in best of ones against Vitality and Forza. They actually managed to keep their tournament hopes alive by eliminating Astralis. So that's, like we pointed out earlier, that's Device gone, not being able to make this this major. That's also Blame F not going to be able to see a major in CSGO, which is also mind-blowing in its own right. But that does mean that NiP stay alive in this. So what do you think about NiP right now? What's their shape? Because, I mean, it feels like they're still trying to figure out what it is that actually is supposed to make this team work.
The problem with this team, basically, is like a part of what made it exciting was on paper, it looks like a really interesting roster. But aside from, like, they've done all right at this RMR so far, obviously still yet to qualify as of the time of recording, but it just has never worked like you thought it would. Like, literally, when you look at all these names, there's not a single name aside from Alexi B that you can just rely on. And that's just because he's the IGL. Like, obviously, when you look at the roster on paper, first things first, I want Config as my star. Mega skilled player, right? It's taken him ages to bed in with this team. He actually hasn't looked that good in NiP generally. Like, he was all right at this tournament. He had some good games, but then again, we're playing lesser opposition. Obviously, people will know. Broland sort of popped off at this RMR, but he's been mad underwhelming since Alexi B came. Headtrick, I mean, people know the story. I've said it a million times where, like, he sort of has chosen to be an AWPer while coming into tier 1, which is like, what? But the problem with the Headtrick one is it sort of works half the time. I'd say he's more like a coin flip. Sometimes it looks good. Sometimes it looks a bit like, is he actually an AWPer? And then the Rez one, Rez just looks lost in his lineup. So the problem I have is I actually feel like the reason I haven't totally abandoned hope in NiP, aside from the fact that I believe in the in-game leader, and I think that's a big piece, is I still feel like with the names you have on paper, dude, even just like one roster move could fix this whole thing. And by the way, I have heard behind the scenes that there is a very real world where Hampus will come back at some point, I'm assuming now for CS2, and he'll just replace one of these names. It just depends who will he replace. Like, will it be Rez? Will it be Brolan? Who knows? Because it's assumed it's not Config, because he obviously signed the contract most recently. So on the one hand, I do think NiP, this lineup right now, if you put them in the server, they're not a very good team. They're very hit and miss. But I also feel like there's so many ways I feel like you could reformulate like most of the players in this team and make a very good lineup. Mm-hmm. They're not that far, I don't think. But I agree. Like, if you pick a random game, they'll have some screamers, mate. They have some really bad games.
It's just I still, like, I'm getting flashbacks just thinking about it again, the Vitality NiP one where I'm just like shouting at my screen and it's like, do something, guys, what the hell's happening here? That match was so painful. So I mean, it's like you say, you've got, as soon as they add Config into this team, you're thinking, holy shit, okay, actually, like, now they've got some serious firepower on here. Config, Brolan, Rez, like, you should be thinking like, okay, then now we're cooking with gas. And Headtrick as well. Although Headtrick, again, you know, it seems like he's having a little bit of a slower pace to kind of find his form. It doesn't quite seem like he's.
What fucks him is this, mate. It's just that we know the finances and we know it costs a lot of money to sign him. If this was an academy player, like for the NiP Academy, you'd give him a lot more time. You know, like, it's only been a few months. It's like what I said about Monacy when he first joined. I didn't expect him to just rock up to Katowice for his first big LAN and just drop like +130. No, of course not. But the problem is they did sign Headtrick as though he was the next Monacy. So essentially, like, the business side of it necessitates it's got to work sooner or later, you know.
Yeah, that's the. I mean, I'm looking at his stats now.
They're not terrible, mate. They're just a bit whatever.
Terrible. He's got a 1.10.
Like I say, he has a good map here and there, and then he has a map that's not that good. And so it's that's why I say, I always think, like, you have to look on different levels. Like, what you have to do is this: you have to ask for NiP, is Headtrick good enough? For Headtrick himself, he's doing all right, like you say. He's tracking, you know, he's playing his first proper tier 1. He's in an international squad. He's from Ukraine, remember, guys. He's not some fucking like guy from like Balkan guy who's super fluent in English. Like, he's working into a totally different cultured lineup. So I don't hate on his game. It's just it's not enough for NiP at the moment. And quite frankly, as you say, it's the others also that suck for NiP. Like, they're having a hard like the problem they have is, as much as it sucks to have like Ziwu go ham every game, If you're the IGL, that's a nice piece. Like, you've got your best player is reliable. He always plays this way. You can do things with the rest of the team. If you're in NiP, I don't even know what you're doing if you're LXCB. I bet you're just reformulating every series, mate. I bet you're just trying new things all the time. Who the fuck knows?
Especially because you're left wondering, I mean, what kind of support does he have to work with right now? Is it still Threat who's providing strategic influence on the team? DJL, what is he slotting in as with his coach role? How much leeway does LXCB have to call, or is there others that are getting involved on it? It feels like there are some mysteries around it that could be cleared up. We could be seeing a little bit more about how the team runs. But I mean, you feel like with the kind of plays that NiP have made, and I mean, if anything, you can't say that. You got to give them credit, right? When opportunities have presented themselves to get big names, they have pulled the trigger. I mean, Device, obviously the big one. Config, they snapped him up as soon as it was possible. Head Trick, they're trying to make plays here. It's not like it's a team that's kind of, like a somnambulist kind of stumbling through here and there. No, they are actually trying to keep their hand on it, and they are actually willing to make it. Now we just need to see the results. Now we just need to see them actually, dominate the rest of this group. They have one more best of 3. We'll see who they go up against, and they need to just dominate whoever it is that they run into and qualify and get through into this major. So I'm very curious to see how that pans out for them. It just means that it's going to be tough because, I mean, we're going to come down to the wire, and you're going to wind up with teams like Cloud9 potentially. I mean, depending on how this goes against, let me just double check again. It's looking good for G2 to actually 2-0 here. So, you could be running into Cloud9. That's not going to be pleasant. You could be running into teams like Forza, who are clearly a threat. Although Forza, they've played against each other already, so I don't think that they would wind up in an elimination match against one another. But there's also ends that you have to worry about. I mean, you're going to have to deal with some teams that have got some firepower, so it's going to be really interesting to see how it pans out here for NiP. Old habits die hard. I almost said, for the Swedes, but yeah, those days, not the case. Not the case anymore. Swedish organization, guys.
I mean, by the way, just as a random piece of trivia, because a lot of people won't know this, because Finland obviously literally was once upon a time like part of Sweden Empire or whatever, even though they have that whole history with the Russians afterwards. If people don't know, there are certain areas in Finland. It's just that LXCB isn't from one of these areas. There are areas right along the border where some people just speak Swedish, or there's Finns that know Swedish. So the stupid thing is, I would imagine, from knowing Lurpus and Nato and all the people I know from Finland, I would imagine LXCB in school did Swedish and can speak like a very, very basic level of fluency. The problem is, it just wouldn't make sense to be the IGL and communicate in a language you're not that fluent in, would it? So on that one, I can see why they did just go international. Like, I think that would have been a waste of time to like try and make him speak Swedish, as it were. Like, well, I don't think that ever was a viable proposition. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.